Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I had a subscriber contact me and she wanted me to talk about going to find a job and your disability, and when the company calls and says they want to talk with you about the position, and it can be nerve-wracking, kind of figuring out what to say or what to wear, and whether you mention your disability or not, and if you do, then how you go about that. I'm going to add some things in here today about what they can and can't ask you. So hopefully that will be helpful. The first thing that I like to my cat is on my table. The first thing that I like to talk about is kind of what you do before you get there. So I definitely do my research. I make sure I know all that I can about the company, and if I can find it about the person who's going to be talking with me that day, and kind of their role in the company and what they do as well. You're not helping. You're supposed to be helping me. You're supposed to be helping me. Can you help me? I always practice. That's kind of my number one thing for me. I do have a stutter, so the main thing I do is I practice, and what's funny is that the one thing I practice, which I can usually never get right, is having to say, "Hi, I'm here for my interview," and I don't know why, but words that start with vowels are always more difficult for me. So I usually sit here and practice. I might find kind of mock questions online, and then I go through them and practice that way as well. I also practice on how I'm going to mention my disability, if I'm going to, and if I'm not. Mine is definitely kind of a weird one. It's definitely more mild, so it's not super it's noticeable, but not as noticeable as if I was like in a wheelchair or something. And I know this video is not going to be geared toward the whole spectrum of disabled people. It's definitely going to be just more about my personal experiences. So I definitely have more of a mild disability, but I always practice talking. So I definitely say what I usually say a lot, and I just repeat myself. Sometimes there have been ones where I just don't mention my disability because I get there and I'm not as nervous as I usually would be, so my stutter doesn't get that bad to where you would notice it. And that's kind of one of the only things that get in my way for a job, whether it's picking up the phone for that job, being at the front desk where you have to talk to people. I always, if I do mention it and I get the job, I always tell them it takes me about a week, and then I get comfortable being in that position, and then my stutter actually gets better. It's definitely, part of it's biological, and part of it is definitely psychological. The more nervous I get, the worse it gets. So before I go, a day before, or if it's work you have to go in the morning, then I do it the night before. I always pick out an outfit for me, and I always make sure that you look good. Obviously, you always want to be comfortable. That's also kind of a point. If I'm not comfortable in what I'm wearing, I'm not going to be confident about myself. So don't it's a fine line of wearing what you think you're supposed to wear, but also finding something that you're comfortable with. And sometimes those don't overlap. But I tend to go with either slacks or really nice jeans that don't have like rips or tears, and then a really nice blouse and a blazer and flats. And I usually straighten my hair because this is not tameable. So those are the things that I couldn't do beforehand. When I get there, if they make me wait for the person, then I sit there and kind of in my head try and calm myself down. I really try and kind of get that nervousness to a minimum, because that way my speech is better and it helps. You always want to make sure that you're as happy and bubbly as possible, and try not to take things too personally. I know that when I have mentioned my disability, there's been sometimes some ignorant questions just because they don't know, and I'm so used to questions. People constantly ask me like, what's wrong with you? In general, that questions like that don't really bother me as much now, but you just have to remember that they might not know about your disability or how capable you are. And I always make sure you always put the best spin on your disability. It sounds bad, but I do have a speech impediment, but it doesn't get in the way of my job. Yes, it might take me like a few seconds longer to get the sentence out, but in the grand scheme of things, I can do that job just as well as a non-disabled person. And that's really what you want to focus on. Maybe it might take you a little bit longer, maybe a thing to provide reasonable accommodations for you. Like most jobs that I try and get are desk jobs, and that's because I can't stand for like a long period of time, like 8 to 10 hours. So usually in that situation, if I'm not sitting for the position, so then I mentioned that my reasonable accommodation would be a chair or a stool, and that's kind of where I'll go into what they can ask you and what they can't. So by law, they can only ask you about your abilities and not necessarily your disability. So they actually cannot ask you. They do have to give you reasonable accommodation. Mine usually is just a chair or a stool, but that's also why I mainly apply for desk jobs. And that's kind of where we get into, do you mention it, when you mention it, and how you do. They don't need to know what your disability is. I don't think they're allowed to even ask that. You're just allowed to tell them what you can do and what the changes you'll need at that job to help you do the rest for what you need help with. I've gone to at least like 3 of these in the last week, and I usually mention it. There are times when I feel like super comfortable and it doesn't feel weird, and so I don't mention it, but on the whole, I do mention it. And I don't really go into detail. I just say a disability just mainly affects my speech. So, and that's more of a psychological thing sometimes, where it just is worse when I'm nervous. And they know for the most part, interviews are nerve-wracking, and you want to make it perfect, and you want to make yourself look amazing. And so the person that you're talking to, they know that regardless if you have a disability or not, it's a very nerve-wracking thing. It just so happens that when you have a stutter, being nervous makes it worse. So most of the people I've met during job interviews are nice about it, and they kind of know that most people are going to feel nervous regardless. I mean, if you're more disabled or have a, if your disability is more severe, then you might need to mention it, but just know that you don't need to go into detail. You don't need to explain what your disability is and how it affects your body. You solely need to just mention what you can do, and with your disability, what accommodations you would need. So I hope this helps. Hopefully it's not long-winded. Hopefully I was not just babbling, and this actually was good information. I have some links to forums, online stuff that I found about this that helped me. They'll be on my blog. Thanks for watching. If you are new here, then welcome. If you're one of my subscribers, hey guys, feel free to subscribe. If you're not, like this video. If you have questions or comments, you can put them below, and I will see you next time. Bye.